I kind of got started with TouchDesigner, started doing live shows, and saw somebody using TouchDesigner for live show visuals, and that was back in 2019, and that's how we kind of got started. Miles is a long-term friend of mine, and that's how we kind of got started in the TouchDesigner community. And during COVID, we had a lot of time to post and start to really gain a good following, and that's where we are now. And we like to use TouchDesigner and Ableton a lot for our live performances. And yeah, we're just going to be showcasing a little bit of that today. And yeah, Miles, you want to?
Yeah, so yeah, like I was saying, he introduced me to TouchDesigner about last year. By the way, my name is Miles Yeager. I've been doing art and music for about 8 years now, and introduced to TouchDesigner by Jaden, and primarily use Ableton. It's a really good friend of mine. I love that program. And so once we found out about TDAbleton, the link, we were like, man, we need to integrate this as soon as possible. This is really powerful, because we wanted to find a way to, have live music and live visuals. So once we found out, we're like, hey, we need to get on it. And so now here we are. So yeah. So now we have a little introduction, a little performance for you guys, show you what we do, break down how we do it afterwards. So let's go and get started. Okay. I guess we're going full screen then. All right. And then I guess just hit play in Ableton and we're good. All right, there you go. That's it. It would be definitely longer, but we had a very short time constraint. So yeah, that's the little performance. Quickly to break down
I'm going to start with Ableton.
in Ableton, we didn't get to do a lot of the stuff we wanted to do because we had such a short period of time. And also the MIDI controller that we're using, which is the Intech, a really cool company. They're like very modular, and sometimes they're still kind of in new phases, so it was a little buggy trying to get that to work with TouchDesigner and Ableton in sync. A lot of there was a lot of connection problems and errors with TouchDesigner trying to recognize the Intech as well as like Ableton. So we had to actually delete the Intech's mapping in Ableton, so I couldn't map any control in Ableton. So all you heard, all of the audio activity was strictly automated from the Ableton, the track itself routed into, all the tracks are grouped into like a group track right here. and we had a TD level, and that was sent into TouchDesigner as like a TD leveler. We would have a lot more control with individual tracks controlling individual elements and whatnot. But like I said, we did not have enough time for that, and we had some technical difficulties. So all of the mappings that you saw from the controller were just controlling like top level effects like dent, pixelate, or all the controls we had in there. And the LPD8 was merely controlling like the internal effects of the project, which Jaden, if you want to explain, you can.
Yeah, so for the TouchDesigner side, as far as if anyone doesn't know, this is where you find the TDAbleton package right under the derivative, and then you drag and drop it. But we already have it in here, and just to test it real quick, you have to jump inside here. And
sorry guys, but can you make your mic a bit louder? You're very, very
make it
quiet.
louder? Okay. How do I?
Here, let's do like this.
Is that good?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So just gonna test it real quick. This is where the Ableton track should be coming in right now. Okay, there it is. Yeah, you take it out of your, just to see if it was working. Yeah. So you take it out of your TDAbleton package, and your audio should be coming in through here. This is where you bring in your levels and select out which one is playing the audio. And from there, after you take out the Ableton package, this is how we set things up. I like to put like audio levels into things like switches and opacity levels, and these are really all the top level effects right here. These are like the geometry, and like to control something. Just to check real quick. It's controlling a lot of things like the switching of the audio. For time's sake, we had to use the audio analysis, but if you wanted to, you could really take in anything from Ableton, and that's how we usually do for our like full live performances. And pause that. Yeah. Then we send audio data. Here are all the mappings, and we like to send them into things like levels and opacities in order to make like a full, audio visual production. And yeah, like Miles was saying, we like to add in a lot of MIDI. And as far as like we like to do things, usually Miles handles most of like the Ableton. He has like a more of a music background, and I handle a lot of like the visuals. So I prepared this whole visual, and Miles prepared the song from scratch, and that's usually how we like to perform. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys got to see most of the performance, then, hopefully that didn't get. Yeah, we're just gonna show the this is like a better example of like using the Intech, kind of our setup right now. It's like a full-fledged example of using TD and Ableton without the lag.
The sound. Oh, is there sound?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Okay. Well, yeah. So in that example, as you can see at the bottom, there's the Intech MIDI controller, which is actually it's connecting both. There's like a knob portion, and then there's like a button MIDI controller, which they're actually separate modules in which you can connect. In that example, everything is fully fledged. A lot of the things that Greg was explaining is some really awesome techniques, and we typically we didn't do super complicated stuff. All we really did was the visuals are being mapped via TDA MIDI and the leveler through individual tracks, and nothing really super complex, nothing more in depth than that. One of the crucial things though was in TouchDesigner, because we're using a Windows, right? We initially started this on a Mac for the music. Mac, the operating system allows you to use the MIDI controller, the same one across multiple programs, but for some reason Windows doesn't allow you to do that. So the workaround we found was via using this program called Loop MIDI, and it's basically using a virtual MIDI controller, kind of. You're routing a MIDI controller in TouchDesigner, connecting, in this case, the intake, and then sending that to a MIDI out, which would be the virtual MIDI, the Loop MIDI, and then sending that into Ableton as a virtual MIDI controller, and then controlling the effect parameters from that. And that's how you can kind of work around. But I guess there's a component for that in the TDAbleton package. But we just kind of found a workaround just to make it work on our own. But that's essentially all we did. Nothing too complex.
Yeah, and for the mapping, this is like, I just wanted to showcase like all the different audio signals that we had. But for this, for time's sake, we really only used the kick. If you can see that, really only use like the kick that's happening inside of here to control most of it. And yeah, and then we brought in the kick and used it to map to a lot of the things like the switch, and that's one of the main things here that creates like that audio reactivity. That audio reactivity look is it's switching between different scenes. And that's what we really like to do with the TDAbleton side of things. Use it to like, one thing I know Ivan was saying was you can use it to switch scenes, and you can add the MIDI, which is right here, right?
Yeah,
Is it right here?
Hi-hat MIDI.
Yeah, the hi-hat MIDI. And how do you pull up the signal? Yeah, anyways. Yeah, we use that, and then that's the signal that's coming into TDAbleton right here. And technically you could use all of the audio signals that you would need. And yeah, that's pretty much our setup. This is the whole entire project. And yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
It also was very smooth now. So good to see
I don't
that.
know why. It just wants to work now that we're done explaining things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always the same when you like want to show it to a lot of people and nothing works. I know that very well. All right. Yeah, very cool. So thanks to all three of you. Thanks a lot for showing your different projects and workflows.
So hi, I'm Joanna. I also go under the name Spherical Aberration on as an artist, and I've been using TouchDesigner since I think 2017, and I got into it because I was doing Visual Suite, Cinema 4D, and Resolume and After Effects, and I was super annoyed by the fact that you can't do it real time, and you always have to like export and render, and I thought Resolume was a piece of shit, and yeah. Sorry, it was just really like that. Like, you know, when you use a software and it's just like everyone's using it, and then you can even like tell the effects that people are using, you know exactly what they're doing. It's like, I can't do this. And then I met, I had a friend from the US that just moved to Berlin. I don't really remember exactly how we met, but he introduced me to TouchDesigner. He was already doing AV, and yeah, and I got hooked. And then I'm also working at Ableton, and I love using Ableton as well. And yeah, one thing led to another, and I started combining both because it made sense for me. And I was kind of also getting a bit tired to just work with musical artists and acts and just do visuals for someone else's music rather than just doing a whole project on my own. So this is where I'm at now. And I don't have a like presentation format, and I don't use TDAbleton, although when I met Ivan at the TouchDesigner conference in Berlin some years ago, he already told me about TDAbleton, and I think I tried to use it, and then back then
Oh, we lost your sound. Oh, there.
I was just talking about our beautiful story, how we met at the conference in Berlin, and you were telling me about TDAbleton, and then I tried to use it, and then I didn't manage to make it work properly, and then at some point I think I just stopped trying, and then now I found this other method that has been working quite well for me in what I do. So I'm gonna just share my live project, and I'm gonna share my TouchDesigner project, and I'm just gonna show how these two communicate to each other. No performance in between. I hope this time it's gonna work well. So just do the whole screen share thing. All right. So what? The what? The palette. Oh. All right. So when I do live performance, I usually select all my tracks that I put on 2 columns. So one goes from another. I use push to trigger them. And then I have a channel for my synthesizer, a channel for my vocals where I sing. So I make very ambient stuff. I don't have drums at all in my music. So I don't need super fine triggering, you know, because I don't do things like that have to necessarily sync and do boom, boom. And so because everything is ambient and flowy, it's kind of like, I just need certain sounds, like either highs or lows or mids, just to trigger certain movements in TouchDesigner. So on the master channel, I use this live grabber, which is a Max for Live device, and you can download it for free anywhere. Just search for live grabber and you'll find it. It's like, it has more things into it. So for this, I use the analysis grabber and the grabber sender. So in the analysis grabber, I set what I want to, I set my followers and I select them as like mid, low, and high. This is all I need. You can go more detailed also if you wanted. And then through the grabber sender, I have here like a target port, which when I open TouchDesigner, I have this, there's an OSC in parameter that you find in the palette. It's a chop. And then in here, once I add the port number here, the network, it will read exactly what I sent from the grabbers from here, from the grabber sender. Yeah. So basically this is like kind of how I send the sound from Ableton to TouchDesigner. Also because I don't use a different laptop, I just use one laptop for the whole performance. So I don't switch in between. I don't have sound on one and visuals on one. They're just both on the same computer. So it makes it, I guess, a bit easier to just use your own sound. And then from there, yeah, there's an out. This whole other part was made if I wanted to select like for triggers to be sent from like certain notes that I play, but this is enough. This works for the whole track. And then from here, I select it and then I just throw it into wherever I have visuals. So the way I work is that I put each story in a base. It's not really like I can press play so you can see how it moves. So then the sound from here will be triggering certain parameters in my visual. They're quite subtle, so none of them are exaggerated moves. I think this one just would move like these little veins here. They would just like start moving a little bit with the sound. I think if I go to the next one, this one, it just triggers a feedback on this little creature. The sound is put to trigger here. So whenever there's like lower sounds, this whole octopus thing has like some feedback. Maybe I can show you with some sound, so it's not so abstract. Just don't even remember. Yeah, so here the lower it gets, the more it's going to get like a feedback effect here. And I don't know if I can make it more exaggerated so you guys can see it. yeah, so it starts to like shine like this. Sorry, I forgot I have to stop the sound, not the visual. Yeah, and it's basically like this for each little base where I have the visuals in, that the sound will trigger a certain effect that I choose, which means it's pretty flexible. You can always choose what you want to move in the visual, in your visual. And then I use this multi-mix. I layer them and I just like put one in and then one out. And I think a smarter way probably to do would be to also make this more automatic instead of like doing them by hand or a controller. You could like script it so they would go from one to the other. I don't do that. Just because it will be very hard for me to troubleshoot it. So I try to keep it as simple as I can to make sure I don't get in trouble when I perform live and I don't get into things that I don't know how to handle in a live situation. So the simpler I keep it, the easier it is for me to control it. And then I know what I do. And yeah, so this is mostly it. I can definitely recommend, because what inspired me to do this is actually nobody wants to see my emails, surely, but it's this particular tutorial made by Claude, how to build audio and visual live set, and he goes into this exact, like, this is also the technique that he uses when his live performances. There's also, he goes a little bit deeper if you want to, when you do live performances, if you play certain notes and you want those notes to trigger certain effects, you can do that. But because when I play live, my tracks are mostly made, so I only use live vocals, and I use an analog synthesizer as well on the side. I didn't particularly go into that so much. So what is going on? Yeah. So yeah, this is mostly how I do it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ivan DelSol. Been working on TouchDesigner in various ways for some years and doing a lot of Python stuff. And TDAbleton was kind of born because we discovered that behind the scenes, Ableton is using Python to connect to its MIDI controllers. And we thought to ourselves, well, what if TouchDesigner was kind of a super MIDI controller, because it can get all the data out of your live set and send stuff back to it as well. And so we kind of hacked into the Ableton Python and made a tight link so that you have access to just about anything in your live set that you want to use to control your visuals. So here, I'll share my screen. I was hoping those guys would give a bigger overview, but I'll just try to do that for you here. All right, you see my screen okay?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay, great. So basically what TDAbleton is there are a bunch of different operators that are going to give you data from what's happening in your live set as you play. So I'm just gonna play and zoom in on some of these operators. Probably turn down the sound. And I apologize for my terrible demo music that comes with TDAbleton. It's just useful to separate out all the sounds. So what you can see as this is playing is, you know, this basic song gives you song data. So you're seeing mostly just the time It also, another useful thing that it does is when you put these markers in your set, this is something people use a lot. You know, as you pass the markers, you can trigger things on the markers, and you can see in here in TouchDesigner. Can you guys see my mouse pointer? Yeah, okay, cool. You can see where I'm pointing. Yeah, so you can see that it's telling you when you pass points in the set. People use that to trigger a lot. You know, and this is kind of like the highest level of thing. And then, whoops, that looks like it's broken, but you know, if you guys, as you use TouchDesigner, I don't know how much experience people have, but generally all the data that's coming out, you can use to trigger whatever crazy visuals you've come up with. And so just to kind of briefly go through each one here, I'll make this bigger here. So the different Ableton components in TouchDesigner will show you different aspects. So this one is the track. So it's going to give you individual track data. And in the parameters, you're picking which of the tracks you're looking at. So here, it's a little easier to see these tracks here. Sorry, I lowered my resolution for the broadcast here. So yeah, so you can choose the different tracks, including your return tracks and your master tracks. So, so you can go to the track level, chain level. You can do stuff with the individual clips, including knowing which clip is playing in your track. So let's see, I'll show you. So this this track is looking at the kick here, and you can see the playing. And so when I do this, you can also get out which clip you're playing, so you can base some of your visuals depending on your clip there. That's another useful thing that people use for visuals, just to link what's playing. So device parameters here. So another thing that you can base it on is, if you can see this this Ableton device here, the pitch is changing. I'm just using a pitch effect, and it's actually watching this parameter. So if you want to base your visuals on a parameter that you're moving, either in Ableton or with your MIDI controller, you can get you can base it specifically on a parameter of one of your devices or instruments. This one here, this device here is giving the actual MIDI notes. So let's see, it is looking at the one muggy. So if I look at the MIDI in that one, sorry, my screen real estate is a bit confusing right now. I'm gonna try to figure this out. Let's see. How do I get this out of my way, please? Okay, here we go. Boy, come on. Sorry, screen real estate issues. So here's the MIDI notes that are playing here. Actually, I guess maybe we can see them better here. These MIDI notes, so, you know, you can base your visuals very tightly on your notes if you're doing music with a lot of actual MIDI notes. I've actually found when I'm doing visuals and I want to match tightly, you know, rather than using audio, if you can use actual MIDI in your tracks, then you can link your visuals very, very tightly. And then they were showing a bit of the value listeners. Let's see, already see my stuff here. So let's see. So here you can see the kick. And so this Ableton level, that's what 47 VIZN or 47 Vision was using to get the levels out. It's not the actual audio, mind you, it is like detecting levels. But very useful again for triggering your visuals. And this is actually really similar to what Joanna is using, but it looked like the device that she had was maybe had a lot more features. I'm not sure what it all did, but it looked like it did a lot of fancy stuff. And yeah, but so you can get the levels out of individual tracks. So, you know, you can put a level on the master device if you just want to know what sounds are coming out of your whole set. You can put a level device on your master. But to me, more interestingly, is you can put level device on each of your tracks. And oh, I don't have it on that one. Let's see. What am I looking at? Kick, yeah. So I have this level device here, and then you can have different visuals for each aspect of your live set. And there's TDA level. This will just get an overall level of your device. There's also a feature that, which is the TDA audio analyzer, which actually has 3 separate tracks, a low, mid, and high, to get your levels. And you can make this as discrete as you want. I'm just using regular Ableton EQs to just get the low end right here and put that out of the track, you know, and so you can kind of divide up your track. This one's a little more full, so you can see here the difference between the lows and the highs. And like I said, it just you can use regular Ableton EQs, whichever ones you like, to filter out the levels of the different frequencies. Yeah, so that's how you use the audio analyzer. The Ableton rack, this device is made for if you're really wanting to control an instrument or use multiple aspects of an instrument to control your videos. Let me see this. Here we go. So this is too muggy. So this is attached to this one. And you can see I have some automations here. And so it's showing you the different macros here. And you can see that this is happening over here too if you do it with a MIDI controller or from Ableton. If you get into this stuff, the racks are very much the thing that you want to use as much as possible if you're working with these parameters. This is the fastest connection and, you know, closest timed to your music, because there is always a little bit of lag because it's sending all this data to TouchDesigner through OSC. And so definitely get used to using these Ableton racks if you want to use the parameters. It's the cleanest and most direct pathway. An Ableton mapper device, this is just a simple thing for if you want to use TouchDesigner to control your Ableton set. This is generally more of an outgoing one. Let's see, that's on effect rack. Let's see where. Yeah, and so this one is just, you're probably familiar with mapping to different aspects. So you can map it to anything here. And then it should work, but it's maybe a little bit, interesting. I don't know, but you can make this work to control pretty much any parameter in your live set to use the mapper. If you want, that's more if you want to control aspects of your sound from TouchDesigner, which again, there's a little bit of lag because of the OSC, so it's difficult to make a beat work nicely, but you can definitely control your effects, and it works really nicely, you know, to add some some connection of effects from your graphics to your sound, or from your Connect or whatever interactive thing that you have in TouchDesigner. You'll use this mapper. So this is kind of the basic overview. The idea is that you can use any aspect of your live set to control your visuals. And yeah, and mostly what I had in mind was to build your audio first. Once you have your live set and you have your music, then you can easily use the different components to connect those to your visuals. And then you should be able to, you can perform live and play spontaneously, and it's just going to control your visuals. You know, the idea was to make something so that you wouldn't need like a VJ, and you can build a whole visual instrument that matches your audio instruments, and that you can kind of perform freely, and it's just going to control things naturally. So yeah, let's see. I'm gonna move this a little bit, this guy around. Yeah, just I guess I go in a little bit to how you actually get this started, because maybe one of the trickiest things sometimes is installing TDAbleton. There's now a new installer, so when you bring in this TDAbleton device, you'll be able to, if you have multiple installs, you're just going to pick your installer that you want to connect to TDAbleton, and then you can just do a pulse install, and that should just get you going and connected. What it does is it installs a live script or a remote script, which is how Ableton connects to MIDI controllers. And so really TouchDesigner becomes a sort of glorified MIDI controller, a super controller kind of thing. So it should be pretty simple to connect. All of this stuff is also on the wiki. So you can go to the help page and there's details about troubleshooting. And let's take a quick look here. There's details about installation, also different ways, like common Ableton tasks at the beginning here. It tells you, like, depending on what data you want to use, it's going to tell you which of these components to use. Yeah, installation data, and then as much as possible, I tried to explain things in the wiki, but also I'm generally available on the forums and can help with details as people have. If you have specific struggles or things you're trying to figure out how to do. Yeah, so that's kind of the basics of how TDAbleton is meant to work. Sorry, I don't have any nice visual setup for you. I was thinking the other presenters would do the nice visual stuff, but here, you know, once you have this data, you can do all kinds of fun things in TouchDesigner.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, like both for presenting and obviously for creating this, because we all benefit greatly from that.
Yeah, and I also like to hear people's ideas and stuff, and have added quite a few features that people have requested from the forums. So feel free to just throw things out there.
Yeah, well, one main question I often receive or see as well, and I also had the same question, is like, is there a way that you know to actually send the audio data from Ableton to TouchDesigner directly?
No, so generally you're going to need to use like an audio router to do that. You know, that's external software. There's no reasonable way to do that directly from Ableton to TouchDesigner, just because it's too much data. All of that stuff is being streamed directly from Live, and you actually don't have access through Live's interface to the audio itself. It's the, you know, it's really talking to TouchDesigner like it's a MIDI controller, and the MIDI controller doesn't really know about the actual audio. But an audio router should work for you, for sure. If that's, and generally, I think that Joanna has the right idea. TDAbleton is probably not what you want to use if you just want to use your audio. But if you want to base things on which point in your live set you are, or which clip is playing, which MIDI notes, those more specific data, specific parameters, obviously you can't get any of those things through getting just the audio. So this is, TDAbleton is more for getting the actual data from live more than the audio itself.
All right, there's 2 questions in the chat. Maybe you can go ahead and answer these. Then we might want to then we can finish 47 Vision's presentation, and then we can start the breakout rooms where you guys can ask Ivan and the others more questions. All right.
Yeah, so let's see, the question I see, can you use values from a max LFO without mapping it to a parameter? No, you have to map it to a parameter. You can map it to, to a macro that's not used or something like that. But Live does not give you access directly to the LFO data inside. So yeah, you do have to map it to a parameter. Next question, how do you record and export of your TD plus Ableton setup? Yeah, this is a trick. I actually think that the best way is to record your audio and video separately, and then you end up putting it in a video editor to get it matched perfectly, because there is like that 0.1 second delay anyways, and you can then match them up absolutely perfectly in an editor. You can pipe it all through TouchDesigner, if you set up that audio router thing, but those are external softwares, and there's a few of them, and you can do a search on the internet to find a internal router to get the audio into TouchDesigner. But that also puts a lot of strain on your system. So I would actually recommend recording them separately and then matching them up in a video editor. And then Valerie's asking, how does knowing Python help? In TDAbleton, if you want to dive into the Python, there is a whole Python console for controlling your live set, and you can do a lot of things with the Python. I tried to make TDAbleton so you don't have to know Python. You don't really use Python in most cases in TDAbleton. But if you are good at Python, there's a lot of features in there, and you can look in the wiki to use Python. You can create new TDAbleton components using Python, and you can get into a lot of the more obscure aspects of the Ableton Python if you're into that sort of thing. Yeah, there's a whole console and a way to send Python commands directly to Live.
All right.
The last question, the link to the wiki is right on the Ableton component. But if you just search TDAbleton in the derivative TouchDesigner wiki, you'll find all that stuff.
Okay, thanks so much.